오늘 두 번째 기조강연을 시작하겠습니다. 여러분들 모두 기대가 크실 텐데요. 미국에 너무나 저명하신 분이고 교육은 티칭이 아니라 코칭이다라는 명언으로도 유명하신 분이고 많이들 보셨겠지만 방송에 차이나는 클래스의 또 명진행자이시죠. 개인적으로도 굉장히 존경하는 분입니다. 스탠포드 대학교의 폴긴 교수님을 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Microphone working? All right. It's working now. And do you have the clicker for me as well? Good morning. This is Saturday morning, and I'm sure you have a lot of plans, but you came here to hear about innovation in education, so I admire your effort. I'll try to do my best so that this is worthwhile for your Saturday morning activity. I don't know how many of you heard my lecture before? Raise your hand if you have. All right, so we got quite a few of, all right. So I always have an assignment, if you have noticed, but as we're going to be sharing ideas about designing solutions and services for future education, I hope that we keep in mind, this is not just for innovation, but we talk about inclusive and sustainable learning environment for all. I think that those are the keywords that we want to keep in mind as we talk about designing for the future education. And so this is not just for the sake of designing something new. It's not just for the sake of dealing with the technology, but this is for sort of an idea sharing for future education, and then innovative, inclusive, and sustainable learning environment for all are the sort of the ideas that we'd like to share this morning. So here's the assignment. All right. So in my past lecture, I usually asked people to summarize my lecture in one sentence. Something is new something, but now I changed it because a lot of people got the idea and they copied the ideas from the previous participants and so forth. So it's time to have a new assignment. So the new assignment is this. You have to come up with a hypothetical question. What if? What if is the hypothetical question. So if you don't have this question by the end of the lecture, you're not going home. Got that? All right. So I think the what if question is really important in the education space. And to me, a lot of what if questions are 5-star questions. I think a what if question has more power than what is this, what is that, sort of a simple recall question. The simple recall question is just a trigger simple recall. We just need to memorize facts and then recall that. But what if question triggers critical thinking, creativity, and so on. So what if question is something that you have to come up with. And then your simple question this morning, today, here, may trigger something big later, right? Your just simple what if question might be the most disruptive and innovative idea in the history of education. So let's try that out. You understand my assignment? Are we ready? All right, so, I always have to give you some examples, right? So what if question, what kind of a what if question are we talking about? All right, you guys know this company, Uber, right? Uber, it's now a global company, but it started with a very simple what if question. Do you know what the question is? What if we shared our rights? Very simple but profound question that triggered a group of people to come up with a global company in a very short time, right? So that whole company, the concept of a shared economy, sharing right, came from that simple question. What if we shared our rights? Another example, what if we shared our home? Another simple question, but triggering a disruptive economy in the accommodation industry. What if we shared our homes? Another simple question. What if we had only one type of aircraft? I don't know if you know much about the Southwest airline. Since 9/11, a lot of airline companies have suffered because people were afraid to fly, and then the oil price was fluctuating very frequently, and that had a tremendous impact on the operation cost of airline industry. But Southwest wanted to cut down the cost, so they came up with a very simple question: what if we flew just one type of aircraft? That's a very simple question, and yet it had a tremendous impact on the cost of their operation. Now, what if you do not ask questions? This is what happens. What if we stop asking a hypothetical question? I don't know if you know this company, Blockbuster. If you're old enough, you know this. I know this for certainly. This company used to rent out videotapes, VHS tapes. And people used to rent out the tapes, and when they watch it, they enjoy it, and they return it. That's how they were operating back then. It was a big company, multi-billion-dollar company. And things changed. The society evolved, technology advanced, etc. And this company was a little bit arrogant, in my view. There was a little tiny group of people who were called Netflix, came to them and said, would you like to partner with us? We are internet expert. We believe that in the future, people should be able to stream videos, etc. And this big company said, well, no, you guys are too small. Watching video online, that doesn't make sense. So they did not ask the important questions. And they stopped asking the important questions, and therefore, they are what? What happened to them? They don't exist. They're extinct, out of the ecosystem. So that's what happens when you stop asking a question. And Netflix, obviously, is one of the most notable companies in the media industry. And they kept on asking questions. You know, not only offering services online, but what if we can predict what videos people might like? If they watch a video and then if they like it, then they recommend other series of videos. And their prediction is very accurate. So most of the people who take their recommendations, they do watch those. And this company enjoys all the revenue coming from their services. So the good thing that they are doing is that they never stop asking questions. And this is a company that is well known for utilizing artificial intelligence at the maximum extent. So the Einstein says the important thing is not to stop questioning. And I believe this is one of the important pillars in the 21st century education. We want students to be able to ask questions and share them and explore them and find answers, investigate, and through that journey, they learn. And through that journey of questioning, they change. And through that journey of questioning, they cause innovation and revolution. And I'll share some of the examples as well. So AI obviously is a key term that's being shared in just about all industries. In my view, AI today is still in its embryonic stage. It's still at an infancy level. We are amazed about what's being shared online about AI, the new possibilities and so forth. But in my view, it's still, we haven't even scratched the surface yet. It's just beginning. And the report says the AI in education market is to grow from $537 million in 2018, this year, to $3.6 billion by 2023. I think this is an underestimate. The growth of AI in education will be accelerating as we go further into the 21st century. There are a few companies that are already leveraging AI, the deep learning, prediction models, etc. AdmitHub is one of the companies. They are using deep learning models to help students in many different things with their school loans, the school scheduling, registration, the course selection, etc. This company helps these students to succeed, and they are using AI. Another company, Passage AI, This is a company that helps schools and administrators build a new type of services, leveraging AI. And so, like the Admit Hub, this company provides the dialogue flow, the structure, the deep learning models, etc., so that students can be helped with AI. Thinkster Math this is another company that is using AI to help students progress in their math learning process. And if you get stuck with a particular program or problem, then this company has a series of services and guidelines for students to succeed in math. Civitas Learning is one of the notable companies in the industry. With the recent investment from Warburg Pincus, about $60 million poured into this company. Now they are using big data to make predictions about how certain programs would have any effect on student learning or overall school programs, etc. So this company is certainly making a big stride in the education space. In the K-12 sector, Brightbyte, it's another company. They are taking the big data into making predictions and guidance to school administrators who's falling behind. Before they fall in behind, they address those issues. And that's what this company is all about. So my friend Chris Didi at Harvard University says this: we now have the equivalent of the microscope and the telescope for understanding learning, teaching, and schooling in powerful ways. We believe that the AI and deep learning, the prediction models, and the data analytics will continue to thrive and make a huge difference in the education space. China wants to bring artificial intelligence to its classrooms to boost its education systems. Now, Silicon Valley is really good at developing the fundamental principle technologies and solutions with AI and deep learning. China is pretty good at collecting data and leveraging them. And the type of data and the scale of the data that they're collecting and leveraging to make deep learning models, there's no comparison. So I think that China will be a huge force in the AI industry in all sectors, not only in education, but all other industries as well. This company, Cerigo. Cerigo is an interesting company. They are taking AI and they're coming up with very interesting services. In fact, they are doing learning analytics that would be helpful for students as well as instructors. And I will like to demo my Alexa system here that I brought here with me. So this is one of the examples. They look at the student data in detail. And what they do is that if students are falling behind, they notify the instructor. And they notify the instructor saying that, hey, certain students are not getting certain concepts. They need to brush up their understanding on important principles. So it kind of gives the instructors who's falling behind, who needs more help, etc. And at the same time, the service helps students as well. The students are able to ask questions, and then the system is able to answer those questions as well. And also another service that's provided by this interesting group is that they auto-generate learning objects based on a knowledge map. So based on the keywords that you provide to the service will look for the right type of learning objects, the media, the video, the images, and what have you, and it will organize a visual map and provide that to the teacher. And also, it generates assessment automatically. Before we get into any details on this, I'd like to show you what I mean, because seeing is believing, right? So I brought my friend here, Echo Show. As you can see, it has a screen here, so you could ask the system to give you reports, then it will show you the reports and graphs and charts, etc. But let me see if the system is connected to the internet. Hopefully this works, because the live demo is dangerous, as you know. Alexa, are you connected to the internet?
I am connected to the internet.
That's a good response. Alexa, start Serigo personalized learning.
Okay, I've successfully connected to your Serigo account.
Alexa, how is my astronomy class doing?
Your ST111 has 90 students on track and 10 who are falling behind. Would you like me to nudge those 10?
That's a good idea. Let's do that.
Okay, I've sent push notifications to those students who are off track.
Alexa, when do my students study?
Your students are most active on Friday mornings, between 9 a.m. and noon.
Alexa, when should they actually study for better performance?
Individual times vary, but overall your students are more efficient in the evening between 9 p.m. and midnight.
Interesting. Alexa, is there anything I need to review for tomorrow?
Some students are struggling with the concept of galaxy clusters and superclusters. You may want to cover these items in person.
Alexa, can you remind me what supercluster means?
From your content, a supercluster is a large group of smaller galaxy clusters or galaxy groups. It is among the largest known structures of the cosmos.
Thank you, Alexa. Go home. So,
I use natural language.
oh, okay,
processing
yes,
to
thank you,
identify
thank you,
the key
thank you. Yeah, I
concepts
got
in
it,
the
I got
document
it.
And turn them into personalized Serigo content for you to learn. Let me take you through the
No, I don't need it right now. I need to go back to my speech here. So, as you can see, Alexa is very eager to help you with the many requests you might have. In my view, AI is already here in many ways. And there are so many opportunities that we can tap on. AI could be used to create an intelligent TA, teaching assistant, and personal tutor. And you can have a practice question and answer sessions. And you can use it to automatically generate outcome assessments. And you can ask some decisions, because you do not have all the data in front of you, and you may not have all the time to analyze them. So you let the system analyze it for you and make some predictions and counseling services as well. And it can create some games for you so that you can have a little bit of interesting, fun activities while you're learning or teaching. And it can obviously generate all kinds of intelligent reports. And it certainly provides the real-time dashboard services. So this is just the beginning. As I said earlier, AI today, capability of AI and deep learning today is just at the very beginning stage. We're just scratching the surface of it. I've been working on this project called the SMILE, Stanford Mobile Inquiry-Based Learning Environment. The address is smile.stanford.edu. This is a project that I've been implementing in over 30 different countries. What I've been trying to do is change the way that learning takes place. Instead of having the teacher lecture all day long, I want students to be able to raise questions so that their peers are answering those questions and analyzing them and exploring those questions and then discussing them. And that's how they learn, inquiry-based learning for the 21st century. And I also developed the Smile Pi. Smile Pi is for places where there's no electricity or no internet. And you can use this little $35 Raspberry Pi, and then you can have the same learning management system with just a battery, and it operates for over 10 hours. And I implemented it in many different schools, and this is one of the examples from Silicon Valley science class, where students are generating their own questions based on their textbook. In India, students are obviously generating questions from their textbook, and when I asked them, hey, why did you come up with this question? And they said, well, this question is very important, but it's missing in the textbook. So we believe that this question is an important question that we must share. I like their answer because they're taking learning to their own process. They are having the ownership of their own learning. This is one of the examples of early questions when they start to use the SMILE system. This is a question from a first grader. First grader is asking this question. As you can see, there are spelling errors and grammar errors and all those things, because they just barely type First grader. I don't know what you were doing in the first grade, but if I remember my first grade, I wasn't even able to type or anything. I couldn't even read properly. But I admire the student. But with about 6 months of training with a smile, they come up with a question like this. As you read the question, there is no spelling error, there's no grammar error. But the question that they come up with is very interesting. They said, the question is like this. It's hard for you to see it, so I'll explain it to you. Saw minus hammer is equal to hammer. Wrench plus wrench minus driver is equal to 27. Hammer plus hammer is equal to 20. Saw minus driver is equal to 15. Do you get this? What is the value of each tool? Now, this is a question generated by a first grader. First grader. You learn this. You know what this is? If you replace these tools with X, Y, Z, this is algebra. They learned this in the 5th grade. But when you remove the barrier of grade, this is what happens. You let them thrive with their own questions. This is a power of inquiry-based learning. This is another example from Ethiopia when students are asking questions like this. In the early stage of this project, they asked this question: when was Ethiopia invaded by fascist Italy? Are you familiar with that sort of a question? Like when you take a history, world history exam, you take all those questions with a multiple choice. That's what's happening in the school. A lot of multiple choice questions. In fact, that this student came up with this question in the early stage of a SMILE project. But about 6 months later, they started to come up with a question like this: does our Constitution protect women's right? They're going beyond their subject matters in the class. They're going beyond from school topics to the topics and issues in their society and community. So what I'm proud of from this project is that I thought I was just improving the learning process for students in the class, but what I'm actually doing is I'm raising leaders with a question about things around them, not just about school subjects, but everything around them, so that they don't take things for granted. So how does that relate to AI and so forth? So now I'm collecting millions of questions from around the world, and they are evaluated. So what do I do with all the questions that I collect from around the world? I classify them. I use the questions as a data set. I characterize them, what type of questions they're raising, what sort of structure each question has, etc. And I clean them, and I develop a model, and use a TensorFlow and Keras. These are the tools developed by Google. And I classify them using multinomial logistic regression. And this is a lot of mouthful stuff. So here's what I have come up with. I used a deep learning model to evaluate student questions. Does that make sense? Because I get millions of questions from students. I want to know what kind of questions that they are generating on a daily basis. So I use the deep learning to evaluate their question. So this is the screen where you type in your question. It tells you what kind of question you're generating. For example, here's the video. I don't know if you can see. Play the video, please. The student is asking, what is the capital city of Vietnam? And you click the evaluate my question button. And then the deep learning model says, oh, that's a level 1 question. I'm 99% confident. Because it's a simple recall question. It's a purely simple recall. It doesn't really trigger anything else. There's no creativity, no critical thinking. If you just memorized the capital city of Vietnam, you can easily answer that. The next one, can you play the video? So if you're asking a question like, what are the top 10 cities with more than 50,000 people in Italy? That's not just a simple recall. It's a little beyond one fact relationship question. And it says level 2 question with a 99% confidence level, right? So this one may be a little more advanced than the earlier question, but it's about level 2 question. You play the video? Let's see what the question is. Here, how is Tokyo different from Seoul? How do you answer that question? You cannot answer that question by simply memorizing facts. You have to analyze things. You have to compare different facts, right? And then the deep learning model says that this question, this type of question is a level 3 question, right? Let's keep going. The next one, let's see. Why is wake turbulence dangerous to small airplanes? Why is wake turbulence dangerous to small airplanes? This is definitely not a simple recall question, right? You can memorize what wake turbulence is, but you have to explain why it is dangerous to small airplanes, right? So that is a way better quality question than the previous, the level 1, 2, 3 question. How about level 5 question? Something that triggers not only critical thinking, comparison or analytical thinking, but creativity, right? Let's try that. If President Trump never meets with Kim Jong-un, what would be the consequence on his approval rating in 2020 in the new election? If the deep learning says, oh, that's a level 5 question, right? It is indeed a level 5 question. This is way better because this is not a simple recall question. You can answer this question in many ways with your creative ideas, right? So the deep learning is trained to evaluate your question, and that's what I have come up with. Now, these are the non-contextual questions. You just ask questions about anything around the world. But the next one is a little different. This one, I developed it to help teachers to ask open-ended questions to students about certain article or video or documents. So the way that it works is that you have students study some materials, have them read it, and have them ask most important question about what they read or watch. So let's play this video. If you ask a question about this article, oh, actually the video is on the next page. So let me just give you a little bit of a context of what this article is about. They found a bone of a baby, and then they found a DNA from the bone. And that DNA is linked to the DNA of the people who live in Siberia. But this baby's bone was found in North America, and they believe that the baby lived about 13,000 years ago. So what does this mean? How is the DNA of the baby found in North America linked to the DNA of the people in Siberia? So that's the article. So if you ask question about this article, this deep learning model will tell you whether your question is relevant or worthwhile. So if you play the video, and if you ask a question like, how did the Clovis people migrate to North America? This is a very relevant question. How did they migrate? There was a huge ocean between them, but back then, I believe there was a land bridge between Asia and North America, right? So the system says your question is quite relevant to the article. Your question is a typical level 3 question, and I'm 100% confident, right? And what if I want to ask a question that's not relevant? Let's try the next one. If the Clovis people did not like the policy of Mr. Trump, could they have migrated to China? What's it got to do with the article about Mr. Trump's immigration policy, which has nothing to do with the article, right? And then it says, your question is not quite relevant to the article. Please try again. So the system knows whether your question is relevant or not relevant, right? And then it gives you some scores. Where can you use this in the education space today? You could have students answer open-ended questions and have the deep learning model evaluate their responses to open-ended questions. Obviously, I like to evaluate their critical questions, but you could use it for short essays as well. So that's how you use deep learning. And sometimes you may not know what kind of questions you want to ask, right? I have some ideas, but I don't know what kind of questions I would like to ask. So in that case, you would type a few keywords and have the system generate questions for you automatically. So let's try that video here. So if you type a keyword like lymphoma or gene type, lymphoma is a type of cancer, and gene type is a term, a genetic character. So the system says, are we ready to stratify treatment for diffuse large B-cell lymphoma using molecular hallmarks? That question is not for me. The question was automatically picked by the system. So when you have some ideas, but you don't know what kind of questions you want to ask, just give them to the system. The system will generate the questions for you. The importance of this particular question is very significant, because what this is saying is the medical industry says that you have to give a different type of chemotherapy for patients with a different DNA. And the artificial intelligence model knows that because it searches the medical research and comes up with this type of question. So that's the level of artificial intelligence you can experience today. Another way of using the artificial intelligence is get the system to automatically generate questions about an article. So if you give an article about Nikola Tesla and then Elon Musk, and then the system can generate questions at different levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's another way of using artificial intelligence. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. My point is that when you look at a deep learning model at each level, piece by piece, they may not seem that powerful. They may not seem that useful. But when you put them all together and create a super AI being, then it becomes really powerful. I don't know if we are going to get to this level. Probably not another maybe 10, 20 years before we see a robot walking on the street and helping you with a natural language, just like that, as a peer, as a friend, as a coach, what have you. I don't know if we will get there in our lifetime, but I know what is coming to us in the next couple of years. This is what's going to come. AI is going to be the new assistant coach. And you will have an AI avatar with your favorite coach's look and voice. This can be automatically generated. You pick someone you like, the look and the feel and the voice, and then the avatar. You saw this Alexa, right? We don't know how the Alexa looks like, but you can choose that. And you will be able to interact with this avatar that is your favorite with a favorite personality and look and feel and the voice that you want as well. This is coming in a matter of a couple of years. About 10 years ago, I started this project. And this is the ending part of my presentation. But about 10 years ago, I visited a place in Mexico where the migrant workers' children were living. These kids are from a mountain area. Because of the climate change, they had to move around to find a job, to find food. And I met them about 10 or more than 10 years ago. I wanted to help them somehow. How could I help them? And I started with a mobile learning project. I wanted to teach them Spanish, how to read and write through sing-along songs and Spanish dictionaries, storybooks, etc. That's many, many years ago. And then one time I ran into this particular child. This child came to me and said, "Hey, I'm hearing a lot of laughters and fun stories and all those things, but I don't see anything. What's going on? Can you tell me what it is? And can I participate in your mobile learning project?" And that moment, I opened up my eyes, like, oh my goodness, I was excluding these children with special needs. And that was the day that I kind of woke up. My project is not inclusive. I developed all the education games and mobile learning contents, etc., for kids without any disabilities. But there are so many kids who need a special need. And I started to develop audio-based games, audio-based mobile games, and I distributed them, and then I tested them. And these kids who never played games started to play games through audio interface. And then they were having fun. learning executive functioning, cognition skills, and there are various types of activities that engage them and help them to learn and also interact with the systems and peers around them. But back then, I didn't have AI. I didn't have AI to help them. But it looks like we have a new friend. This boy, Tanmay Bakshi, he started to code at age 5. And then now, he works for IBM. He's 14 years old. And he's an expert in AI. And what he's doing is amazing. He developed the sign language interpreter using AI so that if you do sign language, it will understand what you're doing. And at the same time, if you make a speech, it will do the sign language as well. So he's developing interfaces for people where the various needs can communicate. And what's amazing is that he's only 14 years old. We'd love to have him at Stanford University. We'd like to have him continue with his research and study and development work as well. So I think when we talk about future education, sometimes we get dazzled about the innovation, the AI, deep learning, and all those things. But sometimes we forget about the children who need help and children who need a different type of learning environment, different type of resources and tools to succeed in their journey of their education. And so I think what I like to say is that we are looking for AIQ, not just AI. AIQ is artificial intelligence and human intelligence combined. When we put our forces together, I think we can create much more powerful tools, resources, and models that can help all. So I want to conclude this with the idea that we need to design and develop and disseminate learning environments for all, leveraging AIQ. Thank you. Now, it's time to check your homework. Are you ready? Yes? So we have plenty of time to check on the assignments and take extra questions. So I like it to be an interactive session. Who likes to come up with a what-if question? Anyone has a beautiful what-if question? Anyone?
What if we stop assessing?
Stop assessing. I like that question. I really love that question. Do we need to assess? For what? What's the point of enumerating their performance? What does that do? You know, in fact, I went to K-12 schools in Korea. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school. 12 years in Korea. I cannot remember a single day that I enjoyed going to school. You know why? Because they ranked all the students. We had about 60 students. 60 or a little more than 60 students, maybe 70 students when I was going to school. And where was I? In the ranking. The bottom. I was at the bottom. I'm not kidding. Next time I'll print my transcript from my elementary school and middle school and show it to you. I was a terrible student. And then there was a practice called a spanking. So almost every single day I was spanked. Who would enjoy going to school when you know that you're going to be spanked? And when you go look at the ranking, you're at the bottom. And we were assessed every month or so with all kinds of tests and exams. And I hated going to school. So do we need to assess students? And what's the meaning of the assessment in the 21st century? I think that's a very important question. People say, in the early days, when we were talking about equality and education and literacy for all, etc., literacy meant being able to read and write. That was really important. Now, what people are saying is that in the 21st century, that's less of the matter. What they're saying is that if they can code, if they understand how to make things and program and develop solutions, like that boy, 14-year-old boy who's working for IBM as an AI expert, there are so many extra competencies and skill sets that they were not measured in the traditional education setting. And we are going to have more and more of those new competencies that we don't even know about. So, do we need to assess? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. But I think that it has to change. It is overdue, long overdue. And that's why we are here this morning, to ask critical questions, to ask what-if questions. We need to continue to ask what-if questions. Without a question, there's no learning for ourselves. Without a question, there's no change. Without a question, there's no innovation. Without a question, there's no revolution. So thank you for your question. Anyone else? Anyone else with a what-if question?
What if we lose our curiosity?
What if we lose our curiosity? I think that's the end of the... That's a very good question too, because when I ask young students, especially in Korea, I interact with some students and I ask them, what are you curious about? They say, I'm not really curious. I'm concerned about the exam. I'm concerned about the college entrance exam. And I ask them, what do you want to be, when you grow up? And some kids say, I like to own some buildings so I can take the rents. Wow. Wow, is that your future? That's very sad. 21st century, in terms of going back to the literacy and illiteracy, Alvin Toffler said that illiterate people in the 21st century is the group of people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Let me say it again. Illiterate people are those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Those are illiterate people. It's not about just being able to read and write. Illiteracy means that you cannot learn or reboot your thinking. Why? Because things move so rapidly. Things move so rapidly, and in terms of learning resources out there, there's so many opportunities out there. Even Stanford University has a lot of MOOC courses, online courses, for free. If you have not noticed, there are a lot of courses that are offered for free, and it comes with a certificate at the end. Why wouldn't you take that? Why wouldn't you take that learning opportunity that's available for you for free? So I'm so happy. I wish I were a little younger so that I could learn more and explore more in this world, but I'm not that young anymore. I may look young, but I'm not that young. I do a lot of things to stay young in heart, right? But I started to pick up Python, the natural language processing, the deep learning models, all these things. I built it. I self-taught with the courses around. There's so many courses that are available for free. So if you don't have a curiosity, I guess you're definitely going to be illiterate. So I'm thankful to God that I'm curious about so many things. Every single day, every single second, I'm so curious. I want to know. I want to learn. I want to find out. I want to investigate. And I want to share my ideas. I want to brainstorm with the colleagues and friends around me so that we have a better understanding. But there's a purpose. We're not just learning for the sake of learning. I think there's a mistake about what education should be. If you produce smart kids, if that is the end goal, then you are doing it wrong. Because there are plenty of smart people people who are dangerous to this world. There are a lot of bad things that were caused by smart people. Those people who were educated without the mission of true education is to seek peace and prosperity. Share the peace and share the prosperity. And that's why we learn to share to make this world a better place. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind. We're not doing all this innovation and talking about digital innovations and technology and artificial intelligence and so forth, not just to get kids to be smarter, but we want them to be wise. So thank you for your question. Anyone else with what if question? Yes. What if public education is gone? How many people like to see that? Raise your hand. No, don't be afraid. Don't be shy. No. Okay. So what if public education is gone? That has many consequences. What I like to see is that public education can provide the level of the quality of the private education that I see, because there's a huge disparity. In fact, the private education sector is thriving and growing, and it's always healthy. They're generating a lot of revenues, a lot of services around the world. I was shocked when I went to Ghana, and I visited a school, and then there was an international school, and I asked the school principal, how much is the tuition for this international school in Africa, Ghana? They said $25,000. Wow, $25,000 for a school in Africa. Who can afford it? That kind of a school system, I mean, they have Olympic-sized swimming pool. They have teachers with a master's degree. They have a maker space, design lab. Their curriculum is not memorizing facts. Their curriculum is about project-based learning, team-based learning. I loved their curriculum. And my question was, why couldn't that be given through public education system? That was my question. And I still don't know the answer to it. So I think we have to think about ways to improve public education, because public education is really important. It's an important foundation for national growth, and it determines the future and the fate of a country. So public education is certainly an important matter for all countries. It's just that in many cases, their education quality is not comparable to what's offered through the private education. So I like that question. Thank you. Anyone else with a what if question? Yes?
What if you were in charge of American public schools? What would you do?
Probably I would not last long, because maybe I'll get kicked out very quickly. The problem in the US, the disparity is significant. If you live in a wealthy community, you expect a very good schooling opportunities, whereas if you're living in a low socioeconomic status communities, you don't find any good teachers. I mean, that's a typical in the US because of the income disparity. I like Korean education. I mean, it's not all of them, but a certain aspect of it, because it's nationalized. The country is responsible to guarantee the minimum quality of education. And in fact, in order to become a teacher in Korea, it's very competitive. It is very competitive. The exam process and the selection process is very competitive. In the US, they are even having a hard time finding substitute teachers for the low-income communities. No one wants to go there teach, and therefore they have very inferior, teacher quality aspect that you see. So, if I were the Secretary of Education in the U.S., I will say that I will guarantee minimum quality of education in all states, all counties of the U.S., and I will have to define what minimum means, obviously. And it will involve some tax increase, so people may not like that, but I would like to have that minimum guaranteed education quality, and that's a beginning campaign I would have in the U.S. Thank you.
네.
Any other? Or
교수님 지금 플로어에서 질문이 굉장히
Okay.
지금
we have
많이
a lot
오고
of questions
있습니다.
here.
그래서 몇 가지 질문을 제가 선정해서 교수님께 좀 드리겠습니다. 지금 첫 번째 질문 먼저 드리겠습니다. 네, 지금 왼쪽 편에 있는 질문에 대해서 교수님
Yes.
부탁드립니다.
The culture of questioning in Korea is very difficult. I give lecture in the U.S., I give lecture in Korea as well. When I give lecture in, let's say, Stanford or any other universities in the U.S., I don't get a chance to participate in the discussion because the students are dominating. They want to talk more, they want to ask questions, they are answering each other, they are arguing and all that. When I come to Korea, I go to the most prestigious universities in Korea and I give a lecture and then I ask them, do you have any questions? Silence. Silence. You guys know the President Obama was here in Korea and gave an opportunity to the press reporters, Korean press reporters to ask questions. No one, no Korean was asking a question. And yet Chinese, they said, oh, now we'll ask a question on behalf of the Korean reporters and so on. It was quite embarrassing, and I was wondering why is that the case? Why Korean students, even adults, don't like to ask a question? Because they never had the opportunity to do so in class. I think that this is not about the system, this is not about anything else. This is a culture. The culture has to be provided. The culture, it should be a comfortable atmosphere where you can ask any question. There's no dumb question. There's no bad question. All questions are useful and important questions. And that has to be the culture. Once you have that culture in place, then people will start to ask questions freely. So it's not about any innovation or anything, but it has to be the culture. As I implement the SMILE project in schools and in companies, if I start with the SMILE project in the first grade, the first graders think that this is school. They think that this is the way that the school is operating, inquiry-based learning. So they feel very comfortable as they move on to the higher grade. They continue to ask questions about everything. They don't take things for granted. But whereas if you go to schools where there's no culture of questioning, no one is asking question. And the teacher asks question, but the teacher would not give students an opportunity to ask question or present their ideas and get involved in discussions, etc. So again, this is about culture. And we do not have the culture here in Korean public education system, and we need to fix it, and we need to fix it today.
감사합니다, 교수님. 근데 질문 많은 걸로 봐서 여기 계신 분들은 좀 독특한 분들인 것 같은데요.
독특한 질문인가요?
네, 질문이 굉장히 많습니다. 질문을 드려야지 않는 것 같고요. 자, 두 번째 질문 드리겠습니다. 왼쪽 편에 있는 질문입니다. 그 AI에 대한 그 한국과 미국 또 중국에 대한 간단한 비교를 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
The U.S., obviously, the Silicon Valley, they're really good at advancing the knowledge of AI, deep learning, and the fundamental research. They have a lot of money for the basic science. In China, they spend a lot of money as well. And then, but the advantage for China is that they can collect lots of data. In my view, they have less restrictive the policies on privacy and so forth. And then they are able to collect large set of data. And then in the AI business, data is the gold, basically. If you do not have enough data, if you do not have a good data set, then you don't have a good AI. You just can't. You got to have plenty of data, clean data, organized data in order to create deep learning models so that you can advance the innovation of AI. Korea, so what about us? We do not have enough funding for basic science and research in AI. We do not collect lots of data, and we don't even get to use the data that's collected in the NICE system. The NICE, it's called the, I don't know, national, whatever it is, the system that collects all the student data. And there's a very strong and restrictive rules about reading the data to do anything. So our hands are so tied right now. So what does that mean? We're stuck. We're neither good with the basic science research. We don't have access to the data set that we have. This is disastrous for Korean government. So I know that President Moon has just had a press release about the easing the access to data sets in Korea, especially the education data. I hope that that will have some impact. I hope that we will be able to have the right type of policies and rules so that we can protect privacy at the maximum level, at the same time promote research with the data set that we have. That's the only way we can survive in this game.
네, 시간이 많지 않아서 몇 가지 질문만 더 드리겠습니다. 다음 질문입니다. 대학 입학 시험 관련된 질문인데 혹시 짧게 혹시 코멘트 해주실 수 있으실까요?
If I were the Minister of Education of Korea, I wouldn't last long either. I'll get kicked out very quickly. But I will let the university decide how they want to admit students. I do not want to dictate how the university should admit students with what criteria. I would leave it up to the university, hands off. I know that there are some issues that would cause, but in the long term, this is going to play out by the market needs and the reputation, etc. If a university that admits students with a crazy criteria, then people will know that that university is not a university for your option. And I think that will play out by the free market. People get upset if someone gets admitted to the university with a donation or something. I think that's the big issue in Korea, but let them donate money to the university so that university can have more science and research lab and so forth. Let them do that, but hopefully they don't do that with all the students. But as we pointed out about the assessment, we need to have a different type of assessment. At the same time, let the university decide how they should admit students. If they do that, I'm sure good universities, I'm saying good universities, will be able to have a very good and appropriate, reasonable admission criteria to find the best students with the 21st century competencies, and let the university thrive with the most intelligent students. And so my recommendation is don't dictate how universities admit students. Hands off. Let them decide. And in the long run, that will sort of settle how universities will be admitting, and then students will have to prepare what is important skill sets and competencies to be admitted to a particular university and prepare. I hate those national exams, the college entrance exam. I hate it all my life. I still hate it. I hope it's gone one day. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 시간이 한 1분 남았는데요. 마지막 질문 드리겠습니다. 스마일 시스템에 관한 질문입니다. 짧게 1분 이내로 부탁드리겠습니다.
The SMILE is basically inquiry-based learning. It's a system that tracks student questions so that you can see how student questions are evolving over time. So I think question is the evidence of learning. Without a question, you don't know what they know or don't know, if they understand or misunderstand. But by looking at the series of questions that students generate, we do. Now, some people say, why do we need this clunky system? I say the system itself is not innovative. The interface may not be the best. But what this does, it introduces a new culture of questioning. And that culture is a very valuable resource in today's classroom. We'd like to open up the class so that students can freely ask their questions without embarrassment. If we do SMILE session right here, right now, I say we're going to have 150 questions. But if I ask you to raise your hand and ask questions, probably not. But if we use a SMILE system, we'll probably get 150 very interesting, important, creative questions. So what SMILE does to school, it's creating a new culture. So thank you very much.
감사합니다, 교수님. 모두 교수님께 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Thank you.